Hi, good afternoon and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Carmen McGuinness, and on this channel we discuss topics pertaining to relationships of all sorts, including the relationship we have with ourselves, which I call the primary relationship. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst and a health and behavioral psychologist, and I also have a master's degree in nutrition education. So these are the topics addressed here on this channel. I thank you for joining me today. So today's topic is going to be the ways in which a relationship with a narcissist can change us, the person who is with the narcissist. And I've come up with 10 today that I want to discuss. I'm sure there are probably more, and some of these overlap as well, but I see them as 10 distinct constructs that I want to go through. Now, you've heard me speak before of how our bond with our parents can shape us as adults. And I'll put a link or two up here that will connect you back to that if you haven't already seen them or if you need to view them again after viewing this. Before I start our topic today, I just want to explain briefly that these patterns in childhood can recur in our adult relationships, can and usually do. And most of my examples here today are about adult relationships. However, I'm going to weave in as much as possible some examples from childhood and our relationship with our parents as well. Not all of these are going to resonate with you, but I hope to touch each of you in some way and hopefully help you get off to a better pattern so that you don't fall victim to being changed by the narcissist in your life, or if you have been changed by a narcissist, if you have evolved in a way that is different to what you feel is a more natural and normal way for you, then hopefully this segment will get you off to a better direction. Now, because how we relate as adults is often rooted in our primary bond with our parents, as I've mentioned, the attachments we form in adulthood also have unique power to change us. So these are not changes that have just happened in childhood that are affecting us now always. Sometimes these are changes that happen in our adult relationships with a narcissist as well, which is why I'm using a lot of different examples. And in crafting this presentation, I've included examples from being parented by a narcissist and also being in an adult relationship with one. So if that doesn't make sense right now or seems out of context to this particular video, please just watch and then go back and click the links that I'll be putting up right about here a little later on. So with that out of the way, number one, the first way, or the number one way in which a narcissist can change us is what we call minimizing or even forgetting the narcissist hurt you. So as a child, it's nearly impossible to fathom that our parents hurt us in any way, whether physically or emotionally. And it's actually to our advantage emotionally to try to forget or play down that hurt. That can reoccur in adulthood. So as an adult, it might be an isolated event occurring in a long-time relationship, such as when these names are all made up, but many of them are from real clients that I have had. So an example is when Dave kicked his 13-year-old stepson because, in Dave's opinion, the boy had spoken rudely to him. And then the next morning over breakfast, Denise, Dave's wife, told her son that Dave loves him and means well. So this is clearly minimizing. In this example, Denise is minimizing the event, but as time goes on, she may even forget that the event occurred, and the boy may even forget that the event occurred. And of course, her son is also being programmed by her comments to minimize as well and forget. Or it might be a forgotten bit of good judgment that we had, as in the following example. 6 months before Trina had a brief and ill-fated affair with Eric, she said these exact words to me in a session. "I recently had a flirtation with a man who turned out to be rather messed up. Basically, he needs a lot of women around him to make him feel good about himself. I was smart," she reports, "and saw it coming and got out before anything serious happened. But man, this stuff is hard for me." And that's a direct quote. Well, I guess it was hard for her, and in ways that maybe she didn't expect, because 6 months later, she walked right back into that same relationship. And when I reminded her of her words, when I went back to some session notes and said, "Well, here's what you said about this guy," she didn't even remember having said it. That's how much she had minimized her feeling, her gut feeling about this guy. And it didn't end well. So example or way number 2 in ways that a narcissist relationship can change us. We lose trust in ourselves, or we're in jeopardy of doing so, when the narcissist's gaslighting is so darn good, so well orchestrated, so convincing that we actually buy it. So as children, we learn to trust ourselves through exploring a world which is kept safe for us by our parents. If not safe, if for some reason our parent is failing us in this regard, or if our parents never allow us to explore the environment, then we don't learn. We never learn how to trust ourselves. So perhaps the most troubling example of this that I've seen in an adult came from a 48-year-old experienced and successful businesswoman who 3 times believed her husband, who she had trusted with the accounting, when he told her that the IRS penalties that they were having were mistakes made by the IRS rather than a result of him not paying the taxes, basically tax evasion. 3 times before the penny dropped to the tune of $198,000 in penalties. It's hard to learn to trust yourself again after being duped to the tune of $198,000. So losing trust in yourself is number 2. Number 3, always viewing bad stuff from others as if it's your test, as if you are being given some kind of a test, whether by the individual or society or the universe. Parents are supposed to be the adults, to take responsibility when they blame us for their failings. "I cussed you out because you were so bad." Children learn that they can somehow control their parents' failings by being better children. That's not the way this is supposed to go. If I could only be a better daughter, son, later as grown-ups, as adults, husband, wife, friend, employee, employer. And yes, I have seen employers who continually hire narcissist employees who abuse them. Whatever the relationship, if you feel tested, it's because you probably are being tested. But it's not a test that you have to pass. It's their weakness, not yours. So, number 4, ways in which a relationship with a narcissist can change us. Allowing ourselves to be lied to. As children, it might be something like, "Mommy didn't steal the dress from the store, darling. You just didn't notice me paying for it." So fast forward nearly 20 years to Eric, different Eric, telling his new girlfriend that he hadn't had a 3-year affair with her friend, that she'd imagined or misunderstood the relationship that she'd seen happening for the 3 years before he started into a relationship with her. Instead of calling him out on this when he claimed this, she told herself that he must need her to believe that the affair didn't happen. For some reason, he had this need, so she would just play along. So that's allowing, rather than believing the lie, it's allowing yourself to be lied to. Not quite the same thing as the other one. Well, when we engage in this sort of codependent lying to ourselves, we condition ourselves to start to believe things. And perhaps we should ask ourselves if this was done to us as children as well, keeping the family secrets in the house, for instance. So, number 5, we lose our inner voice. Each of us has a still, small part of ourselves that whispers truths and moral judgments to us. Our higher self, whatever you want to call this. The degree to which we listen to our inner wisdom is closely correlated, very closely correlated, to our sense of well-being and happiness. When our parents tell us it's okay that Daddy spoke that way to Mommy because he really does love me, we learn to ignore our inner moral voice. We learn to turn down that voice that's saying, Daddy shouldn't speak to Mommy that way. That's rude. And later we ignore it in our adult relationships. We fail to see the early warning signs that something isn't right. Something is wrong with this person. This budding relationship isn't really right. So that's number 5. Number 6, we become easily manipulated. Obviously, if you allow others to tell you less than you need to know, give you a half answer or an answer that's completely unrelated to the question that you actually asked, you will slowly, over time, be trained to do just what is asked of you and don't ask questions at all. Number 7, jumping to guilt. Maybe it was my fault that I broke Mother's antique trinket, even though she was on the phone for an hour with her friend instead of minding me while I was playing in the house. Fast forward 30 years, and maybe it was me that spent too much money before the house was foreclosed on. Even though you had total control over the funds and never told me money was tight, and in fact lied to me when I had concerns and said there was plenty of money and I shouldn't worry about a thing. Right up until the repossession notices came, the foreclosure notices, and then suddenly you told me it was my fault because of all the money I spent. When we buy into this sort of behavior, when we accept blame that isn't ours to accept, it generalizes to other scenarios, and before too long we have the weight of the world on us. Number 8, a sensation that you're being watched. This one I don't often hear about from clients, but when I do, it's always alarming. And even scarier than that, even scarier than the sensation that you're being watched, is that you like it. That what you want is to be watched, to be stalked on social media by this ex-narcissist of yours. Or if you're in a current relationship, that your husband or partner is looking at your texts. What the infant wants more than anything else, going back to childhood here, is to be seen, to know that he is watched over. This is how we learn to feel safe and how we learn to watch over ourselves as we mature into adults. If you as an adult find yourself being possessed by the narcissist or stalked after you leave him, but you're okay with it, maybe like it, it could be that you never learned to watch over yourself. And it could be that you were actually never watched over. So these are the sorts of things that need to be addressed in a therapeutic relationship. So number 9, a need to be needed because you exist for him or her. I've heard it said in different ways. He has no one else. She's alone in the world except for me. He can't look after himself. Hero complex, savior syndrome, Christ complex, whatever you want to call it. I've heard it called all of the above. If you're stuck in this trap, you need to look at the reality that your captor has crafted his or her own life, and you're not responsible for that. And more importantly, you need to ask the question, why do I feel the need to be needed to the extent that I sacrifice myself? Sure, we all want to be needed, but our self-worth shouldn't depend on it, shouldn't hinge on it. And number 10 is perhaps the scariest of all. When we become defensive and start to fight our way out of the relationship, we need to act with care, lest we become like them. When we stop trusting ourselves to choose who to let in because we've been duped before, almost like social paranoia, we've become avoidant in our attachment style. We put up walls, just as the narcissist that taught us how to do this did. Instead, we need to learn how to choose so that we can trust. And when we believe that we are worthless because now we have no one to save, no one to help us prove how good we are and how worthy we are, we've become the needy ones, just like them. While they crave attention, we crave being needed for the attention that we give them. That's no way to live your life. So there's my 10 for today. As I said, I'm sure there are more, and I invite you, if you think of one, to add it here in the discussion section. So that's what I have for you today. And in some ways I feel that this particular segment is very much not a standalone segment. And again, I encourage you to go back to my introduction and view the video links that I put up if you feel kind of left hanging with this. And I thank you very much for visiting me here on my channel today. And I look forward to seeing you midweek for my midweek sneak peek as to next week's content. And then, of course, next Sunday for next week's segment.